from the age of 0 to 40 is research.
So life starts at 40?
Yes, it really does begin at 40.
Hallelujah.
We are stepping into our spiritual awakening or spiritual deepening. Really what's happening is it becomes a tug of war between your ego consciousness and the soul's desires.
You use this understanding as a parent.
Imagine if every single parent had their child's blueprint. It really does help me understand what's happening, and it's showing me where I haven't healed yet. When you can tap into the right energy, you can literally create miracles in your life. People say it can't be that easy. I'm like, no, it's actually supposed to be. Humans are attached to suffering. The soul is not.
Oof. If you are someone who is wrestling with the question, what is my real purpose? Then today's episode is for you. I am joined by someone who I've actually known for more than a decade. Before I was doing any of the things people see me doing now, and before she was doing the work that she's doing now. My guest is Gellyahnah Aakhen, and we are talking about how the secret to identifying your true purpose in life may just be found in your name of all things. And after Gellyahnah went through her own spiritual awakening, spiritual deepening post-divorce in 2016, she discovered an ancient methodology of deriving your soul contract from the sound frequency of your name. Now, I know you have a ton of questions after just hearing me say that. We're going to dig into all of them and so much more in my conversation with Gellyahnah. So let's get to it. Gellyahnah, my friend, welcome to Powerhouse Women.
I am thrilled to be here.
This is actually so cool for you to be here, for us to be having the conversation we're going to have today, because we first crossed paths in a completely different season of life. We were both doing different things. I knew you as Gelly, which we're going to talk about the power of names today.
Yeah.
And I rediscovered your current content in a season of life where everything changed. And we're going to talk today about the powerful work you're doing and how it can help people identify what their actual purpose is, which is a big question.
Yeah.
And a big inquiry for those of us, especially who are reaching this, I don't really love the term midlife, but it is, right? Midlife part of the journey.
In human years.
Yes, that's
it's
true.
It's actually the beginning in many ways.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's where I want to start. I found your current Instagram profile through a reel. I like to call it the Holy Spirit algorithm.
Okay.
Certain content is just delivered to me that I'm like, oh, wow, that was exactly what I needed to hear, or that exactly speaks to what I'm going through right now. And it was this reel about the spiritual awakening cycle that happens specifically between the ages of 35 to 42. Mm-hmm. I want you to speak to what happens at that time of our life in human years. And we're going to unpack this because it radically shifted the way I was looking at everything that had happened in my life over the past year.
Right. Well, and thank you for sharing that with me, because we're literally talking about a 90-second reel that reached the right people and delivered the right message. And so this one in particular, what I was talking about, and so many people were able to relate to it, because I was talking to people that are 35, between the ages of 35 to 42. And I was essentially explaining why it feels like their life might be falling apart. And not just their life, but the infrastructure of their life and everything that they thought was to be true now is not. And because I went through that myself as well. And as I was going through it myself, I didn't even necessarily have the tools or the knowledge that I do now, but in retrospect, I can explain it to people. And so everything in life tends to happen in 7-year cycles. Okay. And this is more of a Kabbalistic perspective, the spiritual perspective. And the cycle between 35 to 42, this is our 5th 7-year cycle. And this is when we are stepping into our spiritual awakening or spiritual deepening. And really what's happening is it becomes a tug of war between your ego consciousness and the soul's desires, right? Ego consciousness being, this is what we're born into. These are societal expectations, right? Like we want to, I don't know, go to college, get the degree, get married, right? Like people have these different things that society essentially tells us this is what's programming. Programming. This is what's going to make you successful. But not all of us are here to do that. And some are, and that's okay, but some are not. And so when you get to 35, the soul says, all right, ego, you've had your 35 years. And now it's time for me to sort of come online a little bit more, my desires, and let's get you to what you actually came into this lifetime to do. And so here you have people that have maybe worked their entire, working career, whether they're entrepreneur or in a job, to achieve a certain status. And all of a sudden, it's all coming. It's crashing down, right? And I'm talking work-wise, but this could also be in personal lives, right? So I often speak, my divorce came through at 35. And I find that for many people, their divorce comes around that age if they get divorced. But again, it's between the ages of 35 to 42.
What is it specifically about that energy? I want to dig deeper into this ego consciousness versus soul consciousness. Is it this, I almost picture it this way, kind of like the soul, kind of like tapping like, hey. And at 35 for me, that did come in a career shift. You and I crossed paths when you were running one of the largest networking organizations in Phoenix. I was a brand new entrepreneur, just knew I had to get out there, meet some people. I remember being petrified walking into those rooms. And I was in a journey that for sure was a part of my growth, but it wasn't the ultimate expression. And it took, I was just sharing in the last episode, actually, the last interview I recorded, we're not sure which order these will air in, but about this pivotal season where I was sort of like thrust out of that business and forced lovingly to trust that what this current journey, building Powerhouse Women is something I was meant to put my energy into, even though it wasn't making money yet. It felt so uncertain. I had everything the ego wanted in that previous. I was on stages, on the cover of their like internal magazines, making more money than I'd made before, not the money I thought I was meant to. And I couldn't deny the fact that I did feel a resonance with this entity that people see now as Powerhouse Women. And when I thought about it, I made the conscious decision. It was an energetic decision to go all in on Powerhouse Women at 35.
There you go.
And what happened afterward was a very, very real dismantling of all the things that I thought I was building and the reasons why I thought I was building them before, which did feel more from an ego place. Ego isn't a bad thing, but I think it was that piece of me that thought, oh, that would validate me.
Right.
Versus this is the true expression of what I feel like I'm here to do. So how do we distinguish the difference between that? How would someone know if their soul is calling them into a different relationship, into a different career? What does that feel like, look like on a visceral level?
Well, I think, initially in life, so let's take a step back. Everything from the age of 0 to 40 is research. Okay. I
just want to pause there. Okay. Yeah. So life starts at 40.
Life, yes, like the deeper, Hallelujah. Joyful, yes, it really does begin at 40. And so Carl Jung said this.
Yeah.
But also, again, this is something that's mentioned within Kabbalah. So this is mentioned in a number of sacred texts that really 40 is when life really truly begins. So everything up until the age of 40 is research. And when we are in a research phase, this is where the ego, like you said, ego is not a bad thing. Ego, it wants what it wants. And for instance, my networking Phoenix business, a lot of that was, I got so much of my ego fed in that too, right? The stages, the local celebrity, all of that, right? And I'm like, please, nobody look at me. Like, okay, I don't want to leave my house. It's a very different energy. But that's not a bad thing. What happens is, and I'm actually going to use that business as an example. When I launched it at 27, I launched it from a really pure place because I really did want to connect people. Like I just have this love for people and I want to connect them and help them. And the way that it expressed itself at 27 was through this networking business.
Yeah.
So again, it's not that I was on the wrong path. Like you said, it was just a part of my journey, and that's how it was being, it was manifesting at the time. So I loved every aspect of it. By the time I was leaving the company, it was a dream that turned into a nightmare because I overstayed my welcome. I really should have probably walked away around the age of 35, which is when my divorce came through, but my ego wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to prove whatever it is I had to prove. And the universe says, okay, if this is your decision, go for it, right? Because I have free will, but I was miserable. So when you ask me, how do you know? If you're not happy, if you're not in joy with how you're manifesting your existence, you're probably on the wrong path.
Yeah. Or I'm going to even add a layer to that I resonate with so deeply. If the reason I'm staying is anything that ties back to what other people are going to think or what I think of myself, the way I'm perceived, that's typically the language that my ego is talking to me through, which is really just a desire for safety, a feeling of safety and security. So I find this real. It meets me at 40 years old as my life is truly starting. And in a lot of ways, things are falling away. And there was so much hope and it was almost like when I read the caption beneath it, it resonated with a part of me that wasn't the conscious awareness. I knew even when I was ushered into this really transformative season last year, I had this higher consciousness that there was something I couldn't see or understand working in the midst of it. If I could just surrender and learn what I was meant to learn about grief. It's very easy to say now. It was a very messy process.
Yeah.
And it led me to your work, which the core of it is helping people to understand truly like what their soul is here to do using their birth name. It was such a fascinating concept. And I'm also the type of person that anything human design, astrology, the Enneagram that will help me just better understand my experience as a human, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
And so I downloaded my report. You have a kind of a self-study version of it on your website. And I wasn't really expecting much, but we were just quickly reviewing some of what I learned from my chart before we started recording. And it was profoundly resonant in ways of like beyond things that I've even shared with people, things I've struggled with, things I feel like my soul is here to experience. So let's kind of bring this back. How do you describe the work that you do?
Well, I call it a soul contract reading essentially. And you described that so well. That is so beautiful. It just I love that you had that experience, by the way. And really, like you said, what I'm doing is I'm working with your birth name. So let me just explain why the birth name. That people always ask, why the birth name? Why not the name I currently have? I don't even like my birth name. I mean, people have other reasons. So before your soul reincarnates into any given life, it chooses everything. It pre-plans pretty much everything. So you choose your parents, which is very triggering for many people I know. You choose your siblings. You choose what you're going to look like. And you choose your exit points. You choose your birthday, and you choose your birth name. All of this is important. So birthday, we know it's, astrology, numerology. The birth name is the sound frequency. And sound is so powerful when it comes to creating our reality. And here's the example that I give everybody, regardless of your background. We've all heard these two stories. So even if we take the most traditional story in the Bible, in the beginning, there's literally nothing until God starts to speak things into existence, right? So of all the ways God could create, it's through sound.
Wow.
Okay. And if we step away from the Bible and, we're told the Om, that's the sound of creation through Hinduism, and the entire universe was created from this one sound. There are many other sacred texts. I'm just giving people the two that most have heard of.
And just realizing the through line that no matter which story is the foundation of that belief system, they actually all connect with that principle, the power of sound.
Exactly. And so the sound within your name is literally what creates your reality. So it doesn't even always have to do with the particular name. Sometimes it does, right? Because some souls have a particular preference maybe, but
those very type A souls.
Yes, there are type A souls. I will tell you, very stubborn type A souls, they exist. But it's more about the sound frequency. And so when I take your birth name, that is the soul signature. That is the sound that you came in with. It's like your birth date. You can't say, oh, I don't like that I was born on May 25th. Now I'm going to change it to January 30th. Like, okay, like that's not, I mean, it's a thing, but it's not really a thing. You could do it if you want, but so same with your name. You're welcome to change your name, but what happens is all the energies now sit on top of the original. The original never goes away. So when I decode the original name, I'm able to see what your soul pre-planned. I'm able to see the karma that you brought into this lifetime, your unique talents, your goals, and ultimately, what is the overall arching purpose of this entire incarnation?
Okay, I'm just going to pause there because for some of you listening, that might be like, say what? How? Okay, how? How does that actually connect to the sound frequency of the name? And how did you discover this technology?
Okay, so we'll do one question at a time. So how did I discover it?
I have a lot of questions that I'm so excited to dig into.
We can be here for days if you want, but the way that I discovered it, so I was on my own healing journey, right? So I'm just going to take you again to 35. My divorce came through. And mind you, I don't know if you remember this, but my now ex-husband was also my business partner.
I didn't know it until I was revisiting your story because I wasn't as involved in the networking scene at that time.
Right. Neither was I. I was just there. No, I'm just kidding. No, but when the divorce came through, this was a personal and a business divorce. So talk about the infrastructure of my life completely just, derailing. And it was painful in many different ways. And so I went on this healing journey. And I've always been, we'll just use the word intuitive. Okay. I was born intuitive. A lot of us are. Yeah. But I thought everybody was like me. I didn't actually realize that I'm operating on this sixth sense, the way that, others are not. And there's this story that I tell people. It was specifically in high school. I was talking to one of my friends and she was telling me she had a crush on this guy. And I looked at her and I'm like, the guy that's the black hole of energy. And she looked at me like I had 10 heads and I looked at her like she had 10 heads. And I'm like, this guy's literally like I would look at him and it was just black, and not that I see things. I mean, I do see things, but I more feel it. So to me, he just felt like this black energy bubble.
That's more how I experience my intuition too. It's like a knowing.
Right.
Yep.
And she's telling me she has a crush on him. And I don't know. I was like, okay, that's just.
Yeah.
But it was at that moment that I'm like, am I seeing and feeling things that other people are not? And that was sort of the beginning of it. Even before that, when I was younger, we're talking 5, 6, 7, like really young. I was obsessed with the horoscope. I was obsessed with astrology. I would lay on the ground and stare at the stars. Like I was that kid. Again, I thought everybody was like me. I remember I was really young and I got a book on analyzing handwritings. Like these are the things I was always interested in. We would go to the mall and my friends would go to like Abercrombie and Fitch and I was running off to Glyphics, which I don't know if you remember that, but that was like the psychic store. You did? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That was like they sold incense and numerology things and like
just normal teenage things.
Yeah. Like that was my obsession. And I would always hope that I was like, oh, I'm walking in because they had psychics in there. And I'm like, I hope a psychic comes up to me and gives me a message. Cause sometimes they would just come up to you and give you, probably to try to get you a real. That was my obsession.
But you were really drawn to it. Yeah.
Always. And so the reason I spend so much time explaining this is because this is what I tell people. Look at what you liked when you were a kid. Yeah. 5, 6, 7, 8, because we're so pure, society hasn't gotten to us yet. to tell us otherwise.
Yes.
So look at what you're drawn to.
Yeah.
So back to your question, how did I discover this? I've always been drawn to this kind of stuff, but when I was running Networking Phoenix, I was in my masculine, right?
Yeah.
Like the business jackets, the high heel.
Like literally like the business suit.
Right.
That was the vibe of these events.
That was the vibe.
Funny.
And I stepped away from my feminine, but I'm actually such a feminine being.
And just for anyone who doesn't use those terms in everyday vernacular, even when we say feminine, it's like that is the intuitive part of us. That's the part that's very connected to that inner knowing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I was on this healing journey, and it was around the age of 38 that I was watching something on Gaia. I don't know if you're okay. So Gaia is like, for those that don't know, it's like Netflix for spirituality.
Yes, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Right. And I came across my teacher talking about this work. And within, I don't know, a few minutes, not even, of him explaining it, every single cell in my body was on alert. Pay attention, pay attention. There was I had a full on physical reaction, like a watershed moment. I'm like, what is he talking about? And he was talking about the soul contract between him and his son. And it was just, I don't know, I really don't have human words to explain this, but something happened. And I went down the rabbit hole. And I'm still there. Yes. Yeah. Like
just send food, send snacks.
Right.
We're not coming out of the rabbit hole.
Right.
And the specific technology, I researched a little bit into essentially what it is when we say sound frequencies. Each letter of the name is assigned a number, and that's connected to what?
Okay. So we can think of this almost as a numerology, but it's not the numerology that we think of when we say numerology. So I don't want to confuse people, but it is a sort of numerology. And what we're doing is I'm actually converting your name into Hebrew sounds, because the Hebrew language is one of the sacred languages that's pure vibration of source energy of the creator. And like in Hebrew, the numbers and the letters are one and the same.
Okay.
And so we're getting the definition from that. It's Kabbalistic, has roots in, there's a few modalities that they pull from, but a lot of the definitions, if you want to go, you're asking me a deep question, so I'm going to give you the deep answer, but is this book called Sefer Yetzirah, and is the book of creation. And in there, it speaks how the world was created by using these particular letters, these sound frequencies. And that's a lot of where we derive the definitions from.
Okay. So for anyone who really wants to go down that rabbit hole, I feel like that's satisfying enough to send them on the journey of understanding more. I think the greater listening audience, what I really heard for people, even thinking through the questions that come up in mentorship sessions, in our DMs, when we interact with the community, just this question of like, what is my purpose? And I think it shows up in a couple of places. I think when we've been talking about these pivot points, when there's just knowing deep within that the journey that we're on might not actually be the journey we're supposed to be on, and whether there's resistance to that change, whatever it is, I think a lot of people, why I resonate with the entrepreneurship community, is there's this hunger. And I think it puts us on a spiritual or personal development path that ultimately leads us to understanding ourselves and our purpose so much more. We think it's a financial opportunity. It's not. It's a spiritual growth journey.
Absolutely.
So I want to circle back to something you said, that the soul chooses its name.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that?
Oh, how do we know that? It's what we're taught in sacred, esoteric information.
And you have some cool stories of women who've shared the way that they received the names of their children. You have a daughter.
Yeah.
Was there an experience where it felt like, how do I want to ask this? She chose her name and
absolutely
relate it to you?
I love sharing this story. I'm so glad you asked me. I don't think anyone's ever asked me this on a podcast. Yeah.
I want to hear.
But yeah, so 2 years before my daughter was conceived, I was at a women's event. Shocking. Okay. It was like a business women's event. And this lady got up on stage and she introduced herself, and her name was Eris. I'd never heard that name before. the moment she said her name, full on chills, another one of those like watershed moments, and the snowing came out. Do you have chills
pregnant
right now?
Yeah, you weren't pregnant at the time.
No, this is 2 years before she was conceived.
Wow.
And I had this knowing I'm going to have a little girl and her name is to be Eris. That's how it came to me. But so many other parents will have stories of how the name came to them. Sometimes this is the most frequently one I hear from people all over the world. When I was pregnant, they say, when I was pregnant, I was asleep and I had a dream that the baby came out of my belly and said, hello, my name is so-and-so. And they literally introduced themselves to the mom. Mm-hmm. I hear this one over and over. And then I hear the stories where, you know, somebody was younger and they all of a sudden like just fell in love with the name, I don't know, like Sadie or something.
Yeah.
And their whole life, they knew that when their first child comes, it has to be Sadie.
Yeah.
So we get the information from the child's soul. Like it drops on us throughout our entire human journey. I love
those stories. It's cool being in a season where in the last like several years, so many close friends have had children, and watching them go through the process of the name coming to them. That's actually the experience. Mm-hmm. So of course I called my mom and I said, okay, I remember you sharing with me. She had picked out the name Chelsea for me. And it was back when I was born, I'm like, it makes me sound ancient. They didn't do like a gender reveal. You didn't know until it was the baby is here. And I said, do you remember why you named me Lindsay? She said, I don't know. I just looked at your cute little face and I thought Lindsay was cuter. And that just was your name. And, you know, and my mom isn't very like woo spiritual. So, but in her own way, it was like, no, I just knew that was your name. And she's like, and then Lindsay Marie just flowed. Yeah. And so it was. Yeah. Yeah. Which is so interesting.
So beautiful. And I hear this often too, where people have a name picked out, the baby comes and they're like, that's not the baby's name.
Yes. Okay. So now I'm really curious. Those of you listening, you'll have to write in and tell us, do you have a cool story about choosing your children's name, or were you told a story about your name? I know you said when you post that online, you get a lot of responses from moms.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were sharing how the soul contract reading, and we actually have mine here because I think I'm such a visual person. I think when I try to describe what this is, being able to show it is a way to help people understand how it can assist them in understanding what their true purpose is. Because it's not like this, and I'll have you describe what this is. I'm going to hold it up so the camera can see. And this is, if you guys aren't on YouTube, you can go watch it on YouTube. So it's a series of numbers. It gets assigned to these different areas of life. And it really is designed to help us understand our karma, which I'm going to have you define what that is in a moment, and just what that actually tells us. Some of the talents that we are here and that our soul is here to, talents we bring in as a soul to help us work through some of life's challenges. And then ultimately, like the goals we're meant to achieve and what is our mission here. So what I wanted to say about that is, and I know you get this question a lot, it's not going to say like, okay, Gellyahnah, is my purpose to be a teacher and work in a school? And, you know, you'll get those very linear, logical questions. It's it's almost like what's the energy of what your purpose is? Yes. And mine, I thought would be kind of interesting to share and have you sort of decode, because anyone who knows this podcast or even little parts of my journey, again, I didn't expect much out of getting this soul contract reading other than I trusted you. But I didn't expect it, I think, to hold so much depth about not just who I am now, but the person I've become. Yeah. So do you want to explain for anyone who's not watching this kind of what we're looking at and what information it holds? Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what I'm working with here, it's a Star of David. And the Star of David it's a Merkaba. It's a sacred geometry symbol. So the Star of David has the triangle that's facing down and then the triangle that's facing up. So the triangle that's facing down, this is where we get all the physical aspects of your life. Physical aspects meaning not so much your body, but your ego consciousness. This is what you're born into. This is life circumstances.
this is where your personality is getting developed. And that's why that's your first 35 years of our life, which, most people say is pretty mucky, right? Where we don't know what we're doing. I mean, do we ever know what we're doing?
No.
I don't know, but
like the older we get, the more we realize what we don't know.
Right. But the first 35 years it's that ego consciousness experience. And then the triangle that's facing up, that's where we get all the spiritual karma, spiritual talents, spiritual goals. And that's the soul's deepest purpose. This is the heart and soul's desires. It's what you really, really came here to do, right? And so again, 35 to 42 is that 7-year transitional cycle. So the energies, every single energy in your chart is playing out the moment you're born to the moment you pass. What matters is, because your free will comes into play. And so this is why the charts, how you said, this is the example that somebody gave me, and I thought it was so great. The lady said, I thought we're going to get on the call and you're going to tell me I'm supposed to be like a firefighter. Sure. Like something so overly specific. Yeah. She's like, but this was so much better, right? Because again, they don't expect to have the depth of their experiences explained. And I think this is what you're sort of alluding to, is that some of these things in our lives that we think are accidental were actually part of our journey to get us to where we're meant to go. And karma, you asked me to define karma. Karma is not a bad thing. Yes. Karma is just cause and effect. And when your soul is coming in and choosing the karma it wants to work through, it's essentially giving itself the opportunity to rebalance. Yeah.
It comes like with a curriculum, something it's here to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So your karma is actually your greatest gift. And for you, looking at your karma specifically, I can see what you're here to bring to the world is you're a messenger of truth. You're here to deliver the truth to people. And you're very intuitive. So, right, it comes to you, you say it, you feel it, you know it. But you're also very analytical. So you're not like, you've got your, okay, I'm going to come play with energy, but you're also like,
I need to back it up with some quantum physics to understand it.
And that's the 5.
So
they're
true.
Very analytical. Yeah. Now, your spiritual karma, the 6s, and then that's also your spiritual talent. You are insanely creative. Yeah. Like your ideas, right? The 6s, they have constant ideas. Their challenge is like, how do I focus on these ideas? Because it's like, they're so scattered. I want to do this. I want to do that. That sounds great. Should I do it? Should I, so that's the challenge of the 6s. But this is what you're here to bring to people. You're literally having ideas and creating things into the physical existence. You're birthing them.
That's what creating the annual event feels like to me. It's pure creation. It's the one area of my life where I understand viscerally what that energy feels like. And just this year, so I just turned 41 as we're having this conversation, a very clear directive to lean more into my creativity, creating physical art with my hands, things that as a child, I remember art I created as a 6 and 7-year-old. I don't think I could do it now. I could, because I have, but that artistic talent and just creativity, it wasn't even just like I could draw really well. I just could create. And that's what I feel this journey into creating what I do now, and specifically the live event, is such a pure expression of creation. That's why it has the frequency it has. That's why people feel the way they feel in the room. I couldn't tell you sitting here right now, we're recording this in January, I don't know who the speakers are going to be. I don't know what the stage is going to look like because it hasn't been revealed to me yet. Right. And I trust that implicitly. Yeah. And it's what people feel in the room, that no one could duplicate it because it's just a pure expression of my heart and soul. So I really felt that. And I was surprised in the best way to see that as I was just I feel like I'm coming back into what a creative soul I actually am.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
I want to talk about the power part of it though, because power is also this theme. And I think that helped me understand some of the challenges I've had in life. Yeah. Some of the people I've attracted into my life. I mean, to the extent when I think about what it feels to be disempowered, I have memories. One of my earliest memories is as a 3-year-old, because we only lived in this home until I was 3.5. My little next door neighbor best friend. And I remember her chasing me. We were just playing in the sandbox as kids. and she's got a handful of sand in her hand. She's saying, come eat dinner, like pretending to be my mom. And I'm running like, ha, 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 no. And then I just got tired because, we were running. And I stop and she shoves the handful of sand in my mouth. Oh. And it played out in this was a friendship that then I had through my early years, but just I tended to attract even friendships with people who felt the need to overpower me. Mm-hmm. And there was something about me that was actually really attracted to that dynamic, more in friendships than dating relationships, although that had its own version of that too. So explain what this chart can essentially help us realize about. I think that's more the karma piece, right? Of understanding, or maybe just part of what gets developed or what we have to work through to develop. Because I wouldn't have the same connection to my own sense of power had I not needed to find it, I guess is how it feels to me.
No, but you're absolutely correct. So you're just so you know, you're talking about this 9 frequency.
Yeah.
It's not sitting in your karma. However, with every frequency in our chart, we're going to have the positive and the negative aspects. And so what you're talking about right now is the negative aspects of your 9 frequency. So let's define that. The 9 frequency is the dragon. This is the most powerful frequency in the entire modality. The key word is power. So dragons will attract other dragons. So what it sounds like what you're describing is you're being a dragon, you've attracted other dragons, and within the dragon relationship, there's usually a victim and an abuser, right? And I'm using...
And it can probably manifest in all different ways.
It can, exactly. It can manifest in different ways, but when it's imbalanced, essentially it becomes a power struggle. And so within romantic relationships, this is where you see the narcissistic abuses. So people that have 9s will usually attract narcissists into their life, right? So I don't know if you've had that in friendships or just other situations.
100%.
Okay. So there you go. So that's because dragons, and usually they're dragons too. But again, they fall more into the abuser category. They're here to heal that and to not misuse their power. And you're here to step into your power and not allow anybody to misuse their power over you. So it's a journey for both of you.
Yeah.
Right? But you get attracted to come together and sort of have this experience.
The other thing you said to me when we were chatting just before starting is you looked at it and you said, do you trigger people?
Yeah.
And then I got real hot and sweaty under the armpits because I feel like that's been a part of the growth in all seasons. But I think I'm just seeing it with such a sense of understanding the reason I feel so uncomfortable with the thought of triggering others is maybe because it's a part of that frequency. And again, if I even just think back to being young, I just had this awareness that my presence impacted people in a certain way. And especially growing up in a small town in the Midwest, a place where there's just not really as much conversation about big dreams and big purposes, I felt very clearly that difference and how I think I was feeling energetically how my presence made other people feel. And that was very unsafe to that version of me who was conditioned to fit in.
Well, and the reason I asked you that is because I saw how many 9s you have in your chart. And again, it being a dragon, I mean, just when anytime anybody steps into your aura, you're pushing them. Now you're actually pushing them to be better. You're pushing them forward.
Yeah.
But if people aren't ready for that, it could be very triggering. And you can't really escape that part of yourself because that's what you came here to do. I mean, for you, it's sitting in your soul destiny. Yeah. 2 9s. Your others are in your physical goals. So physical goals, you're literally pushing on everyone's goals. So wherever it sits in your chart, that's what you're pushing on, right? And I mean, this is what you do.
That's what Powerhouse Women is.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I wanted to highlight that not just selfishly to have this personal reading with you, but to highlight to people, I almost want to be like, is everybody hearing this? and getting that, the wisdom that can be revealed, and also bringing it back to, there's no specificity in this. It's not saying you're going to have a podcast, you're going to create a community. there's no certain way this has to evolve, but on a soul level, I've even said, I've been very open that I don't know that Powerhouse Women is the only thing I'll ever create. I bet I'll create many other things, but what I do know is I'm here to deeply understand transformation.
Yeah.
And I love how you said push on other people. So I think I can tell, and I tend to attract people who know they're signing up for a transformative journey. They know they're signing up for their own soul's evolution. And the conversations we have here are really designed to help and support them in that journey, because it can be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And one other thing I want to mention, the reason that this is not overly specific is because you have free will. Just because your soul pre-planned it doesn't mean you're going to accomplish it. And let's say there's 22 different levels of your soul contract. You may only get to level 5. You may get to level 10, 15, whatever. And so, you may be, let's say you didn't come up with, Powerhouse Women, but you came up with something else that was parallel in a sense to what you could be doing that would be fulfilling for you.
Yes.
And I see this happen for people often. So, and it's not that they're off their path, is that they're doing something that's close enough that brings them that same joy, and they're fulfilling the purpose. So that's why it's not specific, because of like your free will. But people also have free will to go completely off path.
Yes.
I see that too.
Yes. What does a soul contract like this, and how can maybe understanding each component that we've talked about help us in our relationships, romantic or otherwise?
Well, I think knowing your karma is a pretty big one, because within our relationships, romantic or close relationships, your karma is always going to get triggered. So you know how there's people and they always feel like everybody abandons them?
Yeah.
They probably have the abandonment karma. And some people feel betrayed all the time. Well, they're probably working through the karma of abandonment. So I think just understanding from that perspective helps a lot.
And then it kind of begs the question, okay, so if we start to notice these themes, whether someone has any interest in, understanding their actual soul contract reading or not, how do we heal karma? How do we graduate, if you will, that soul lesson where we start to attract different realities, different relationships, different experiences? What's the pathway through?
Such a wonderful question. And, the word heal is a big thing. It's like saying the word marketing, right? It's like, okay, there's so many different things underneath there. So healing could be literally anything from personal growth to traditional therapy. And then we start to get into breath work.
Yeah.
And then we've got energy healing, we've got meditation. There are just so many different tools. The biggest gift you can give yourself is, I think it needs to start with a personal growth to really dig into yourself and understand yourself.
Yeah.
Within that, a lot of healing will happen. Personally, I can tell you, I was obsessed with personal growth since I was in high school. I remember going to like all the little retreats that they would have. Like I always enjoyed that. But beyond that, I was always interested in energy healing too. And starting at 35, when all this happened, I went and worked with a lot of different people. But nothing has helped me personally as much as the current work that I practice, which is connecting with the creator. And this I learned about 3 years ago from my dear friend, Katie. And this work has just, when I tell you, Lindsay, I see literal miracles in my life. I'm not saying that as, like a frou-frou thing. Like I'm literally seeing miracles, and like people don't believe me. They're like, what does she mean miracles? But literally, I'm like, I don't even know how that just happened. Like, what is going on? Like, it's a phenomenon. It's not a physical human thing that we're used to. So when you can tap into the right energy work that speaks to you, you can literally create miracles in your life. Does it have to be what I do? No. But if people want to experience it, I host monthly group healing sessions. But regardless, outside of that, look at what's happening in your community. I started with breath work. Okay. So if you need like the first step, go find a breathwork class and take it. And so are you familiar with breathwork? Okay. Right. I mean, it's
powerful.
It's pretty amazing. So that's what I started with. And people that tell me I can't sit down to meditate and be quiet, or, you know, like my head it's too loud in my head, I send them to do breathwork.
Yeah.
So it's a big question. I'm not going to be able to answer it quickly in the time that we have, but essentially healing is the answer to everything. When you have a deep understanding of yourself, you have deep connection to your higher self, to source energy, to the creator, you step out of that victimhood and you can actually get from all the negative aspects in your soul contract into the positive aspects.
And even as you're talking, it's having me reflect back on what my process in healing, I'll just use that word, through some of the themes that kept showing up, and I can see them now in a new light. And it's everything you described. It's been this journey of returning to my physical body, which is what breathwork, meditation, just the connection, right? My conduit to that intuition, and creating more stillness, which for me is shifting out of that more ego consciousness, masculine energy, realizing how I'm meant to operate and work in the world. And it's so different because I don't get the immediate gratification of like, look how hard I worked for this thing. Yeah. I'm in a very cool season that I'm loving the chance to share it as I'm going through it, because I think there will come a day where people see the results in my life and they're going to be like, how did look at what has evolved. And I feel like people who knew me when, right? You and I knew each other in a whole different season. Yeah. There's been an evolution of it. Yeah. But when you were talking about how life really starts at 40, I feel that very, very viscerally. I want to tie this all together by talking about how you use this understanding as a parent. How understanding sweet Eris and how her soul came to this world through the name that was given to you that she chose for herself. Yeah. How has this helped you as a parent? And how she's 11?
12.
Okay.
Yeah. She just turned 12 recently. Another amazing question. Thank you. Like I felt my heart like jitter when you asked me about Eris, but so the souls choose the parents, right? So just that in itself is like an honor. You know, you look at your children and you're like, oh, your little souls chose me. And I look at Eris and I'm like, one of my biggest fears is to like not fail her. Like she chose me. I need to guide her to her purpose. Yeah. What is she here for? And I have her soul contract. Yeah. And I know exactly what she's working through with her karma, you know, and it shows up pretty much daily in her life, right? So just having that blueprint for your child's path. I mean, I imagine if every single parent had their child's blueprint and understood what their soul's purpose is. Just imagine what kind of world we would be in, right?
And the compassion we would have for those sticking points. I was listening to you on another podcast and you mentioned another point of awareness is the places where there's friction between you and her. Oh yeah. As there naturally is, right? When I think about why my soul chose my parents, and I can see these points where, wow, I've gotten to be lessons for them. And wow, of course they have these beliefs because I have to learn to self-validate and be my own individual. So many things that I think are clear when I look at it like that. And it was really beautiful to hear you talk about that and just own like what you understand about your own karma, what you're healing, how it interacts with hers and what her soul is here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we were talking about
more
the compassion. Yeah. More compassion and understanding. But her and I have this the way that our charts sit next to each other, her and I have this clash because it's in the same spot and it's the same energy. And is that 6? That 6 that you have, I also have that 6, right? Because I'm also a creator. And it's like our creative energies, they butt heads. Yeah. And it'll be something as silly as like, I want to color it this way and she wants to color it that way. And I'm giving you like a really silly example here, but the creator in me is like, And then almost like this rage will come. And that's just, okay, I won't have rage over that, but there's other instances where her energy can trigger this rage in me that nobody else can trigger. And it's just because of the proximity. I mean, she's in my face constantly and the way that her energy sits. So I can understand, it really does help me understand what's happening. And it's showing me where I haven't healed yet.
Yes.
That's what's important. And we can look at two charts side by side. So I can look at, you know, two people in a romantic relationship. Are you in a karmic relationship? Are you in a supportive relationship? We can look at that, but they can't get that through the digital. That has to be one-on-one.
A reading. Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be a one-on-one reading, but it could also, I've had people come in because they need closure and understanding with their parents. Right. And I mean, not everyone gets loving parents.
Yeah.
And there's usually a reason for that. So.
Yeah. It's just fascinating to me. It really is. It is a rabbit hole that I am just, what is the word? When you come down a building and you're in a harness, what's that word?
Repelling?
Yeah. I'm just repelling down
repelling
into the rabbit hole with you.
Yeah.
Because it's so eye-opening. And I think I am very much in this spiritual growth path. And this last 6 years, because I'm about 6 into the 7-year cycle, has radically changed who I am, how I see the world. And in a lot of ways, I feel more true to myself and my soul, I guess is a good way to say it, than I did in the previous 35 years leading up to that.
Yeah.
And I'm also at a point, maybe we'll just kind of like wrap it up with this. I'm at a point where, because so much has changed, I don't really know who I am or who I'm becoming. Is that part of like the final piece of this 7-year cycle? Because so much has been wiped clean that I'm kind of like, well, I don't know. I just don't know. I know and I don't. I don't know.
Right.
I'm no longer attached to the way it has to look.
Yeah.
And that's a very new feeling for me.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful feeling. I feel like it releases
it's freedom.
us.
Yeah,
it is. It's freedom. Well, what I can tell you is, again, if I look at the deeper layer of your chart, especially in your spiritual triangles. So the 16/7s, I already told you, they're powerful leaders, but when it sits in your spiritual triangle, this is you being a powerful spiritual leader, but you're like a bridge between heaven and earth. So you have this ability to bring in complex concepts, divine energy, and deliver it to people in a way that they understand. So I think, and having even this conversation, the fact that you even wanted to bring me on your platform is part of you bridging your own existence, right? You're like, the business part I've done, I love it. This is what I want to teach people, but I want to take them deeper into themselves.
Yes.
And really what's happening is your audience, your community is going to follow you along on your journey. And as you keep evolving, they're going to keep evolving with you.
Yes. You know what you're really validating, and in a way helped me answer my own question, is part of what I am labeling as, it's confusing, or I just don't really know, is because, and I was saying, as I was being ushered into this season, before I knew even just the depth of how much of the old identity would be shed, is I'm like, I just feel like I'm kind of supposed to be shifting from this doing energy to being. And the truth is, part of it feels weird because I'm like, you're telling me that my purpose is just to be all of who I am. And this, like sitting here having this conversation with you, yes, we're filming it and it gets put out as content, but this just feels like this is what I would want to be doing on a Monday.
Yeah.
And that's such a radically different way of operating than my previous, more ego-driven, I need to prove it, I need to work hard. It almost just feels like, can it really just feel this fun and easy?
Yes, it can, and it should.
Yeah.
I get this all the time. People say it can't be that easy. I'm like, no, it's actually supposed to be. Humans are attached to suffering. The soul is not.
Oof. That's so good.
Yeah.
I am so grateful. I'm grateful you answered the call to step into this purpose of your soul, because it's bringing so much. I mean, the way that it has brought me reassurance in an extremely challenging season, and how it was as though, again, my human self is having a very human experience of all the emotions of letting go of a past identity. And on a soul level, I feel so sure just that it's all going to be okay.
Yeah, it will be. And you know what this is? I just want to point out, you're speaking to your divine feminine energy.
Yeah.
Because the divine feminine energy, she just is. She is still, she's a queen. You know, things come to her. She's not in her, masculine is action oriented. Yeah. They're chasing, they're doing, there's more ego. There's, you know, and there's a place for both. But the feminine energy, and I'm speaking from experience, because when I transitioned from Networking Phoenix into what I do now, I just wake up and things happen. I don't know how else to say it. Whereas Networking Phoenix, I mean, it was a hustle. I was part of the hustle culture. Yes. Right. And now I'm like, I have an aversion to that word. I'm like, hustle. What are you talking about? I wake up and things happen. Yeah.
That's so powerful. And I'm going to transition this into having you share where people can learn about you, because like when you say, oh yeah, someone would have to book a one-on-one session in order to do that, your wait list is like years long. Like, and I just actually want you to speak to that as you've stepped into your current work and everything you're just saying. How has that actually impacted you as an entrepreneur? Financially, the way, I mean, you spoke to it. You wake up and things happen. It's like a true flow that many of us aspire to, but we don't realize we're not even set up right now on a nervous system level to actually receive at that level. I can tell that for myself. I'm being taught that lesson in a big way.
Yeah, that's such a big thing, Lindsay. Let me just very quickly share that when it was time for me to transition from Networking Phoenix to this work, I was 40. I woke up on my 40th birthday and every single psychic sense was going off. And it was like, you need to step into your purpose now or there's going to be trauma. And trauma is life's way of getting us back on track. So I'm like, no more trauma. And I didn't know what to do. So, because I was already doing readings, but on the side. And I got on TikTok. Back then, TikTok was still making people go viral. I don't think it does anymore. But I got on TikTok, not thinking I would ever go viral because that never happened to me. Within 3 or 4 days, my videos start blowing up. I mean, it was like insanity.
And what were you talking about in these videos?
Soul contract work.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it was just, and if I look at those videos and they're cringe because I did not know what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Like terrible lighting.
It was,
all of it.
No, not lighting, but just the way I talked, like, this was a new thing, right? Yeah. Reels and TikToks are now a thing, but it just wasn't. I didn't know it. But it doesn't matter. And this is an entrepreneurship tip. I'm sure you speak often. It doesn't matter. Just go do it. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I got on, started talking on TikTok. Videos start to go viral. Within the 72 hours of my first video going viral, I had my website. I had all my links. I had my freebie PDF to get them into my email list. So 72 hours plus 14 years of networking Phoenix knowledge, right?
Okay, let's just pause there. 14 years.
Right.
Hustle, grinding it out, 72 hours.
Yeah.
Continue.
Exactly, right? But that's why I'm stressing it. Like I know you as an entrepreneur will appreciate that. Not a lot of people understand that, but 72 hours. And I woke up one morning. So I don't know, like a week or two into that, I woke up to an email saying, I went to schedule on your calendar and you're fully booked out. This was July. My calendar was open through December. I was like, what? It's full already? So that moment, I'm like,
time to raise those prices.
I'm like, not just, time to raise prices, but also time to sell Networking Phoenix. So I put it up for sale and sold it within 3 months. It was the smoothest transition of my life. It was not planned. You know what? I actually got to the point where I was like, I'd like to sell the company. My ego really wanted to sell the company. But if it didn't happen, I was just going to shut it down in December. Sure. Because I was energetically so open to what was happening and I was so pulled into it and I was shown the success. And I'm like, okay, right now, I don't know how to make this scalable because scalability doesn't come from one-on-one sessions, but I'm an entrepreneur. I will figure it out. And that's where the digital soul contract was born, because that's, again, speaking of from entrepreneurship, that's the scalability. So when you ask me, what has this done for me financially, without sounding weird, I don't know, not weird, that's not the right word, but these things, so all day, every day, all night. They just sell.
Like it's the true example of what ease.
Yes.
And being in that place of alignment really can open up.
Right.
That is the journey that I am on, of understanding where there's still some energy that's a little too attached to, I have to earn it, I have to work for it. And it's just so expansive for everyone listening to see someone living in their purpose and have it also be compensated generously as it should be, as we're designed to.
We are absolutely designed to be abundant. So my healing session that I just had 96 people on, it was on financial abundance and prosperity. And what I talked about is how the Creator wants all of us to be abundant, because when it comes into us, we share.
Yes.
That's what we're meant to do.
So powerful.
So it comes to me and I know I'm the conduit and I'm meant to share it. Yes. And I have to stay open to that, because, I don't want to fall into it's coming to me. Great. It's all mine. Right. Because then the energy shifts.
There's so much wisdom to this. Where can people connect with you? Where can they join the wait list? I know you have other offerings. There's the digital soul contracts and other ways that people can interact. The calls that you do in these healing sessions being one of them. So where's the best place to find you? Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. So my Instagram would probably be the best place, which is, you're probably going to link it, but for those listening, it's soul_contracts_practitioner.
We'll link it in the show notes for sure. But that's easy.
Yeah, but as soon as you start typing in soul contracts, I pop up, and my name is Gellyahnah.
I was going to say easier to spell than Gellyahnah. So we'll do you a solid there. So I love to end with the same question for all of our guests. It's a reminder for all of us to pause and really honor the journey, celebrate these moments, these big and small wins that often can be easy to just move on to the next thing. We just call it a powerhouse moment. It can be anything big or small, but just something you want to pause right now, acknowledge yourself publicly for. So when I asked, what's a recent powerhouse moment that you want to celebrate? What's just intuitively first thing that comes to mind?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm being called out because I'm so private, but I'll tell you this. So I recently bought a car, like a brand new car. I've never done that. And the fact that I was just able to walk into the dealership and say, I want that one with all the bells and whistles, and walk out of there with that car. It wasn't even about the car. It was about the fact that I'm at a place in my life where I was able to, I'm getting emotional telling you this, because I didn't even share this with people, because I'm like, nobody needs to know, but I was able to go and do that. And I made that happen for myself.
And that's part of the reason I ask this question, because in the right environments, I think those are some of the most powerful wins to share, because it creates expansion for someone else listening who knows that that's the energy of something they want to experience and they're on their way there. Again, I think this is the whole point of this, is that this is all just a spiritual development program disguised as a financial opportunity. Yeah. And it's cool when we get to experience those 3D reflections of the inner work that's happened.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Oh my God, so many good things. It was so wonderful talking to you.